Rogers is well known as one of the founders and leading proponents of the client-centered approach to counseling. He is the author of such widely read books as Client-Centered Therapy and On Becoming a Person. In recent years, he has turned his attention to the study of group therapy, primarily the encounter group experience. Dr. Rogers has said that the encounter group may be the most important social invention of the century. In this film, he is shown speaking to a group of counselors learning to be group facilitators at a summer institute on the campus of the University of Illinois. The film is intended to illustrate not only what Rogers believes are important factors in facilitating a group, but also to give a glimpse of Carl Rogers, the man, how he himself relates to a group, the quality of his personal interaction, and his ease and warmth with people.
I'd like to interact with you about my way of facilitating a group. I've seen, observed, and worked with a good many group leaders, and I've seen some of the many different styles of facilitation that seem to be effective in working with groups. And I also have seen other styles of being with a group that I don't like, and before I get through, I'll try and list some of the things that I personally don't like. But at any rate, I'm not going to talk of how a facilitator should be or should behave, because I don't know the answer to that. I've learned some things for myself about the ways of being with a group that are effective for me, and I'm going to try to talk about that in the hopes that that may help you develop your own style of working with a group. Certainly my style is not necessarily the style for you, but I think it often helps to know a little bit of what someone else has found useful or meaningful. I can trust the group to develop its own potential and that of its members. And to me, this is a somewhat awesome kind of thing, to meet with many different kinds of groups and to find that each one does have this really inherent ability to help the members develop their own potential. And it's perhaps a corollary of this that I've come to put a great deal of trust in the group process. For me, it's like my experience in individual therapy, where I came to trust not my cleverness, but the process that I could help to release in the individual to be of assistance to himself. And I feel if I can do anything with a group, it is perhaps to release some of its own potential for being of help to each and all of the members of the group. We are, all of us, wiser than we know when we're in a group. It isn't what we do with our intellects, it's that we somehow have a knowledge that transcends that or lies deeper than that. I don't care how you describe it, but that we are wiser than our minds in the thing. Another attitude of mine, I think that insofar as possible, I endeavor not to have any specific goal for a given group. To me, that has nearly always proven somewhat destructive. If, because of bias or prejudice or wishful thinking, I think, well, this group really ought to achieve this goal, it fascinates me that nearly always I'm taken care of and defeated by the group in that, or they really take care of me. I guess probably it's evident that the approach I have toward a group doesn't differ in any very fundamental way from the philosophical approach that I've always had in individual therapy. And yet, I'm fairly sharply aware of the fact that often my behaviors in a group are quite different than what they used to be in one-to-one therapy. And I attribute that to the experience that I've had participating in groups that has really changed me. I've learned a great deal from being in groups, and I suspect that if I went back to doing individual therapy, I would I would behave in quite different ways, even though philosophically I think my background attitudes would be about the same. One other thing that has meaning to me, I want to become a participant in any group I'm in, not simply a facilitator. I think it's very important that I respond to group members, and sometimes to the group as a whole, but more often to individual group members, with whatever feelings are mine in relationship to them. But I think I should own them as my feelings, not as something about them. I don't say, well, you seem to be an inquisitive guy. That, see, would be trying to put some kind of a load on you. If I was uncomfortable from your question, then I better express that. If your question makes me uncomfortable. And that, to many people, seems like a rather small difference, but to me it's terribly important, because I think if I express some feeling of my own, I don't like what you did, or I feel very warmly toward you, or something like that, or I'm kind of afraid of you because you seem to be sort of an overpowering kind of person, any of those things are my possessions. They're real in me. And the other person can respond in any way he wants to. It leaves him freedom to respond. Where if I say, you are a dominating person, well, that's just the basis of an argument. That's not really going to get anywhere in our relationship. So that's, I think, probably the most important way. One sub-part of that is that I would also be more free in responding physically to members of a group, which is something I never did never is too strong a word, but I very rarely did. I very rarely did in the one-to-one relationship. I admire some of the younger generation who are much more free in physical movement and more willing to touch each other and so on. I wasn't brought up to that kind of behavior, and it doesn't come easily to me. And so what I've learned along that line has been very significant for me, even though someone observing me in a group might think, well, he doesn't touch many people, or he doesn't seem to go in much for body movement or physical contact. Yeah, that's probably true, but I guess all I could say is, I'll get comparative, you should have seen me 15 years ago. I think of, this brings to mind one thing that I wanted to be sure and say too. I've come very much to trust my own spontaneous impulses in a group. It's a very physical feeling with me. When I feel something rising in me, that's the only way I can describe it. When I feel something rising in me, I know I'd better respect it and express it. It may seem to have nothing to do with what's going on. It may be a fantasy that suddenly comes to mind. It may be something I want to do. For example, in a group of high school girls and teachers, there's one girl who had taken part in the group, quite a sensitive part, and she had also spoken of the fact that other students liked to come to her with their with their problems. She was quite accessible to them in that way. And then, in one session, after the group had made quite a little progress, there were quite a lot of deep feelings expressed, and then there was a long silence, and then she came up with some very intellectual questions. They would have been all right in the first session, but they just seemed totally inappropriate at this point in the group process. And I got the strongest feeling she's not saying at all what she means, and I don't know what the hell she means. And then I felt a real strong impulse to go over and sit down beside her. She hadn't said one thing that would indicate she wanted anything like that. And I really couldn't figure out why I had that impulse. And I felt it was about 3-to-1 that she would reject me if I went over there. But I crossed the room, and she was sitting on a couch, and I said, could I sit down beside you? She moved over to make room for me, and when I sat down, she leaped into my lap and threw her head over my shoulder and began to sob as though her heart would break. How did I know that? I don't have any idea. That's part of what I mean when I say we're all of us a lot wiser than our minds. If I had figured out, was this a wise thing to do? No, it wasn't a wise thing to do at all. It's just a kind of, as I say, an impulse that just rises from down below somewhere, and I've learned to trust those. I guess I didn't quite finish saying what I started to about the fact that I really want to be a participant in a group as well as a facilitator. I think that how's the best way to put that? I know I always get hung up on the way to rationalize that, so I know the feeling very well. I guess what I would say is I want at the beginning to be facilitative, because I think there, as I'll indicate, I think I really have a part to play in setting the climate for the group and in various ways helping it get underway. But once the group is underway, I want to become more and more a participant. If I finish a group and realize I've been a facilitator all the way through, then I realize it's a pretty lousy group, or that I was a pretty lousy facilitator, or both. And yet I also realize I, like the other members of the group, I guess that's the best way to put it, I, like the other members of the group, would like to be facilitative at various times during the group process. If somebody's hurting, I want to be with that person. I really want to be with him in his pain and so on. If someone is having a struggle trying to bring out something, or I just see on his face it looks as though he wished very much that he could get something out, well, I would like to say something that would be facilitative enough to help him express that. And that, I think, is also the attitude of other members of the group, that they want to facilitate each other. So in one sense, I want to move back and forth between those functions, and yet, for me, that's also a spontaneous thing. It isn't as though I say, well, now I better be a facilitator for a while. They're both real parts of me. I think the only conflict that it brings in me is that sometimes I'm not quite sure whether I'm focusing on listening to what the other person is expressing, or whether I'm more listening to what's going on in me. And I don't know. I know I want to do both. Yet sometimes there's no doubt that they interfere a little bit with each other. That I don't quite know how to handle, except that is a real dilemma at times. And I think that to generalize on that a little bit more, that often the feelings that we're uncertain about are the ones we're sort of afraid to express. And yet those are the very ones that help us if we can express them, and help members of the group as well, because it really gives them permission to express very uncertain things in themselves, where, well, I feel this way and I feel that way too. I don't know for sure. It isn't a clear feeling at all. And if they're free enough to bring out the complex and somewhat contradictory attitudes and meanings that they have within themselves, that makes for a very good group. I must say that when a group goes well, they involve me. And it isn't all a one-way street. I can't actually become a participant unless the group also helps me to become a participant, is willing to accept me as a participant. I know in a recent group of corporation presidents, I think the most flattering thing that was said in one of the last sessions when they were kind of summing the thing up was, but we don't feel like you're a staff member, we just feel you're one of the group. And that to me meant, I experienced that too, and as I say, I felt that was about the most flattering thing they could say. One thing that I think helps me to be a little more relaxed in working with a group is that I think what I do has importance in the group. I think it has real significance. But I don't kid myself that it is the only significant thing going on. I think that if I absented myself from the group entirely or just kept quiet, the group process would go on. And so I don't feel that I really have freed myself of the burden of feeling, oh my, now I'm the facilitator, I'm responsible for this group and for what goes on in it and whether it's a good group or not. I don't think I can carry that responsibility. I don't think it's realistic. I think it is a shared responsibility, and I think that I can trust in the group process to carry us forward, not just trusting me to carry us forward. One other thing I want to mention, because it's been quite a puzzle to me. In a group like this morning, or in some of the courses that I conduct, which are barely distinguishable from an encounter group, I would like very much to have it possible for the whole person to be present. It seems to me that in encounter groups, we quite rightly stress the place of feelings and personal meanings, because so often in ordinary life we don't really have an opportunity to express those. Those are the things we feel are not acceptable. And so it's very good to have an opportunity to bring them out in a place where you have permission to do that. But for continued living, and as I say, in something like a course, I would like very much for the whole person to be present, so that ideas are as acceptable as feelings and are as acceptable as personal meanings, so that, just as I hope in this group this morning, yes, some of the questions will be cognitive, things you want to know. Others might very well be things that you are feeling in this situation. When I say it's been a point of difficulty for me, I think that perhaps because of our culture, nearly all of us tend to operate in one mode or the other. If this is a situation where feelings are permissible, okay, I'll express my feelings. If this is a course or a class, well, here are my ideas on the topic. But rarely do we really get the two together. And I've found it quite difficult, both in myself and in groups, to make that thoroughly possible, because and yet I know that's what I would like and what I dream of, that the whole person could be present, so that, as I say, an idea would be just as acceptable as a feeling, but you would be sure that neither one took over completely from the other. I seem to, in many areas of life, I seem to have less strong instant likes and dislikes than lots of people. This would apply to food, it would apply to a lot of things, as well as to people. So that seems to just be a fairly deep characteristic of me, that sometimes I am put off by someone's behavior in the very opening part of a group. That probably doesn't happen to me as often as it does to many people. I take no credit for that. That's just the way it is. And so I usually do find myself inclined to listen. On the other hand, I have a sort of rule of thumb for myself that if I have any persisting feelings toward an individual, I had jolly well better express them. Now, this doesn't happen in the first 10 minutes of a group, because you couldn't exactly call it a persisting feeling. I'll give him a chance to see what he really is like. But if I find I'm bored by him, or irritated by him, or angry with him, or whatever, then I've learned from hard experience that if we're going to have a real relationship, I had better express that. And perhaps one thing I might bring out, because one thing I still have a lot to learn about, is being quickly aware of anger in myself. I wasn't brought up to feel that anger was a proper feeling to have. And it's taken me quite a long time to realize that it is just as much a part of me as any other feeling. So often, the way I recognize that I have been angry is that I'll wake up in the middle of the night and find myself arguing and really getting after this person, and I think, well, what the hell? Who knew I was that angry at him yesterday? And I can only hope there that I have the chance to bring that out in the open the next day. I wish I could be aware of it right on the spot, and I'm getting better at that, but it doesn't come easily to me. You can't talk as much or write as much as I do without people feeling, oh, this is the Carl Rogers. I have to accept the fact that some people do feel in awe or resentful or God knows what, a lot of reactions to what I am and stand for. And I guess all I can do is to try by my manner, my dress, my whole approach to say, in a sense, I'm not, quotes, Carl Rogers, I'm just Carl, and I'm here with you. And sometimes the group can quite readily accept that, and sometimes they have difficulty. But I think it's only a temporary thing. So I think in the groups that I profit the most from, people realize I'm very human, very fallible, and that I do need them, and that's been a hard thing for me to learn too. I suppose because of my upbringing, I feel I am self-sufficient. I'll carry my own luggage, thank you, and I'll do this and I'll do that. I don't need any help. Well, I do need help, of course, and sometimes need it badly. And it has been hard for me to say that, and hard for me to express it, and hard for me to let people be of help to me. And so that is a very real thing for me. One thing that I feel I can help to accomplish at the start of a group is to help to make people feel safe. Safe enough to be, safe enough to differ, safe enough to express themselves. Now, that doesn't come all at once or anything like that, but I think, I guess others have observed this more than I really feel it, but because it just comes so naturally to me. I do listen quite carefully to what anyone says at the start of a group. It may be trivial, it may seem like a bunch of junk, but it must have meaning to that person or he wouldn't be saying it. And so I try to catch not only the words, but the feeling behind the words, being quite sure that that will, in a sense, say to him, I think what you're saying is worth listening to, and I'd like to catch it. And that makes him feel fairly safe to say more if he wants to say more. There's one thing, though, that I can't do in terms of safety. I can't protect the person from the pain and hurt and turbulence that goes along with significant learning and growth. That, I think, is something I not only can't protect him from, I wouldn't wish to negate that or protect him from it. But in that kind of situation, I hope I can be with him, and in that sense make him feel safer in going through the turbulence or the upsetness that he's feeling as he learns new things about himself in the group.